what these bigger brands are trying to sell you is the emotion that you feel, the satisfaction that you feel purchasing a brand like Coke, or visiting a place like Disney.
You're listening to the Marketing Study Lab podcast with me, Peter Sumpton, the Lego Master of Marketing, providing you the building blocks you need to be successful with your marketing. This intro lasts about a minute, so feel free to skip forward if you've heard it all before. It's nothing new. So what's this podcast all about? We chat to some amazing people to give you practical advice that you can implement right now that will make your marketing truly awesome. The conversations we have will lead you to the actionable marketing knowledge you've been craving. Just a quick word about supporting the show. The best way to do this is to leave a 5-star Apple Podcast review. It helps me get the best guests and helps others find the podcast. All I want to do is help people get the best out of their marketing. If you've got a burning marketing question right now, let's chat it through. All the links you need to contact me are in the show notes, because let's face it, you ain't writing anything down right now. Now let's get on with introducing our guest. Is not-for-profit marketing different to marketing we do for companies that look to generate a profit? We're going to find out in today's episode, and if you think about it, the comms channels are the same, and we would go through the same marketing planning or strategy. But there must be some differences by way of using the rational and emotional influences in how we think and how we feel and how we act towards certain companies and organisations. To help us understand all this, we're chatting to Chris Strub. Chris helps non-profits make a huge impact by leveraging the power of video to create meaningful change. Partnering with Big Brothers Big Sisters of America and the Salvation Army, to name just 2 charities Chris has worked with, he's currently focused on hands-on training sessions and live-streamed event hosting in communities around the world. Chris's notoriety came in the summer of 2015 when he quit his job to take a solo, unsponsored road trip to all 50 US states over 100 days, visiting and helping charities along the way, inspiring the book 50 States, 100 Days. But what I wanted to know first off Chris is, Chris, road trip, what snacks are you bringing?
You know, I've been on this healthy kick the last few years. I think certainly potato chips, were something that I might have gravitated to a few years ago, but now I'm all about nuts, right? So I've got almonds, I've got pistachios, and I think that's really going to be the best way to keep your energy levels up, keep your optimism levels up. So I always keep a bag of pistachios with me. I've got granola bars, or another, nice thing to pack that you don't have to worry about keeping them hot or cold. But anything that's really got that protein-packed value. Again, I wouldn't have answered this question the same 10 years ago if we were talking about this. I'd have a 12-pack of Bud Light in the back for sure. But as you get older and you start to get more health conscious about your body and your well-being, I'm a big pistachio fan.
Oh, nice, like it. You're defo in. You're in. Shotgun, absolutely shotgun for you.
Let's go. On the hotel, plenty of seats available.
Let's do it. Okay. So going back 10 years or maybe even further, what I want to do is dive into your story, what brings you to this point in your career, what you've been up to, and explain what you actually do now.
Man, first of all, thanks for having me on. We talk about, when you mentioned road trips. Road trips are always a long, windy road. My career has been a pretty long, windy road to this point. I started back in high school, even in college. I thought one day that I'd be Rick Riley, right? And I'd be writing that back page column of a magazine called Sports Illustrated. Magazines, for any of your millennial or younger listeners, were these printed pieces of paper that we used to get, with stories and photographs on them. But of course, back in the 2000s, times really changed. So I worked at a newspaper up in Binghamton, New York, for about 8-9 years. I worked on the copy desk. So my job was really to help identify big stories, pick out photos, write headlines, do a lot of copy editing. That really got me into this idea of identifying stories, right? And through that time period, the way that people shared stories and told stories to one another really changed dramatically, right? That no longer was all of that storytelling power packed into the local newspaper office or the television station, but it really became democratized into the hands of everyone using platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, some of the other platforms that we'll talk about today. So for me, I really tried to embrace that power of becoming a storyteller, representing my own brand. I quit my job in 2014 and took a road trip around the United States to the lower
Wow.
48. I quit my job again. Again, we're going to go pretty quickly through the backstory here, but
Sure.
I moved here to Greenville, South Carolina, quit my job again in 2015, and visited all 50 US states in 100 days in the summer of 2015, working with a different youth related nonprofit organization in each state. And the last 5 years have really been sort of, the after the springboard of 50 states, 100 days, I've sort of parlayed and pivoted into a career of working with nonprofits around the US and helping them share their stories through these new digital mediums. So took a road trip with the Salvation Army in 2017 called the Fight for Good Tour, 25 states in 38 days. I worked with Big Brothers Big Sisters, Humana, and now I get a chance to work with a bunch of giving days around the US as our spring giving day season is on tap here in 2020.
Oh, wow. Just for people that don't know, can you just explain what a giving day actually is? Because it's kind of new to me.
Absolutely. So, a lot of people, a lot of listeners may be familiar with Giving Tuesday, which is always the first Tuesday right after Thanksgiving. It's a worldwide giving and volunteerism phenomenon. Giving days are really the natural offshoot of something like Giving Tuesday. I've got my hat on here for you video watchers. So I've got my hat on for the Big Give, which is the first giving day that I'll be working this year on March 26th down in San Antonio. And this is just one of hundreds, if not thousands, of individual giving days that are community or locally based around the US, and they're starting to sprout up around the world as well, where nonprofits can come together and share a common message like the Big Give or like Give for Good Louisville or Give STL Day, where they're all combining their message and asking the community and asking the world through social media to contribute to their individual causes. We add up all those numbers on behalf of the Giving Day, and that's how we get to crazy numbers like $4.3 million last year in San Antonio, $5.4 million down in Louisville. So
Wow.
the numbers are really magnificent when you look at the impact that we're able to make, but it's that collective impact that
Mhm.
really is what a giving day is all about, whether it's a state, a city, a community, or a worldwide phenomenon like Giving Tuesday.
That's amazing. That's great. So some of those numbers are absolutely epic. Do you think you'd get those numbers before we move into some actionable action? I can't even speak. Those numbers are just,
Actual actionable tips, yeah.
yeah. Before we get
I know
into
it's
those
late over
for
there.
for non-profit marketing, do you think those numbers would have been achieved without what we have today? So the digital aspects that we can use to push and promote.
Of course not. No. And that's because every single one of these nonprofits now has its own voice and, more importantly, has been able to establish its own community. Now, of
Hmm.
course, there's going to be intersectionality between those communities. You're allowed to like and support multiple nonprofits within your city or your region. But now, like I said, instead of having to rely on the newspaper, instead of having to rely on a television station or a radio station to share your message, which is again, the school of thought that a lot of nonprofit marketers still live in these days. Now everybody has this opportunity to literally go live on video or to create their own podcast or really to do a lot of the same sort of things and tell a lot of the same style of stories that we used to hold the lock and key to at the local newspaper. So really, again, that spreading of this skill and of this ability to connect directly with our audiences has really helped multiply the impact of these nonprofits, especially the ones that are taking full advantage of how to share their stories using these different platforms.
That's cool, and it makes total sense that people are making use of these platforms for good, which is great to see, because we see a lot of negativity and people that aren't almost in the know can fall down that well of just thinking that social and all these platforms that we can be used for so much good and has so much amazing things on there. It's just a whole host of negativity, which is, it's really good to see in the work that you're doing and other people in the not-for-profit sector. So what I'd like to do, and I think my audience would be really keen to understand this, because from a profit marketing point of view, there's some easy steps that you'd take, and easy things, quick wins, and easy things that you do. But for non-profit, it might be slightly different, or it might be the same. But the first thing I'd like to ask you or get you to talk through is, I'm starting a non-profit, for example, or we've decided, right, we're going to do this campaign, or we're going to do this drive for something. What are you doing to push and promote that?
Yeah, well, of course, it's going to depend completely on what you're exactly trying to accomplish, who exactly your audience is. Every nonprofit is different, and many nonprofits have really wonderful things that they can show openly and talk about on social media. Whereas a lot of other nonprofits come up to me, after I give a talk on stage or whatever, and they say, "Look, like we have this struggle to be able to show." Using some of these tools that you just taught us about, what our mission is. And the answer, I think, really is going to be not thinking about what you do, but thinking about the impact that your service is having on the people that you are impacting, right? So again, when you think about something like Disney or Coca-Cola or some of the biggest brands in the world, right? They're not so much anymore just selling a ticket or just selling you a bottle of plastic, because anyone can put 20 ounces of liquid
Mhm.
into a bottle. What these bigger brands are trying to sell you is the emotion that you feel, the satisfaction that you feel purchasing a brand like Coke, or visiting a place like Disney. And that, I think, is a big bridge to cross for nonprofits. But you want to really think about, what are those positive emotions that are being evoked, no matter what kind of nonprofit you are, somewhere along that chain of what you're creating and the services that you're offering, you are making someone's life better. So,
Mhm.
where can we identify that moment along the process where you're helping improve somebody's day to day life, or you're helping improve the life within your community? And that's where I think you want to keep the focus, whether you're a for profit or a nonprofit. I love using the phrase nonprofit is a tax status, not a business model. So when you were saying, oh, I don't know how, and I get this a lot, how dramatically different it is from a nonprofit
Mm.
perspective versus for profit, I really honestly don't think it's all that different. I think that nonprofits, however, have come in with generations worth of feeling like they are inadequate in some
Yeah.
form or fashion, and they don't deserve the attention, or they don't deserve that sort of enthusiasm from their audience. And using these new tools that we have now at our disposal, it is my job when I go speak at these different places to remind them that they are famous to a few people, and they do deserve that attention. That is going to lead to that success from a nonprofit perspective.
So we'll get onto the tools that you suggest people use in a moment. And I'm just curious, because some of the um, I suppose promotions or adverts that we certainly see in this country, in the UK, almost focus a lot on the negative, the emotional pull of the
Sure.
poverty stricken people, or the endangered animals, rather than seeing the positive side of things. Would you say focus on the positive instead of the negative?
I think it depends again on what type of nonprofit you are trying to you're trying to support,
Hmm.
right? So again, when we say nonprofit, I mean, think of how many millions of nonprofits there are out there around the world, and the variety of topics that we're talking about. Certainly, do I think that there is some benefit to speaking about the problems that can be solved? Of course, right? But I think generationally, that really storytellers, even myself, right? We were taught. I studied journalism to an effect at Binghamton University in upstate New York. And one of the first phrases you learn is that if it bleeds, it leads.
Hmm.
right? So, people are naturally drawn to bad news. I met with a team from the Salvation Army. I actually met with the national commander of the Salvation Army. His name is Dave Hudson, in Washington, D.C. And, he was talking about what really makes an enormous impact on fundraising with the Salvation Army. And he was in full agreement when I brought this up, that when you appear on a national news network, like CNN, for example, even a 30-second spot that mentions the work that the Salvation Army is doing leads to an enormous
Hmm.
fundraising spike. But to me, again, the emphasis is on the help that's being offered,
Yeah.
on the reconciliation, on the growth and the repairs that are being done, and not, again, it might be a slim distinction to your listeners, but not to the gloom and doom that's happening when there's a natural disaster or there's a pandemic like we're experiencing right now. We don't want to talk about the deaths.
Hmm.
We want to talk about the positive work that's being done, that your dollars may help fund, with the Red Cross or with the Army or any other number of nonprofits that are out there.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Again, with the links to profit companies, it's like they don't ever focus on the negative. Imagine if they
Right.
did. What terrible things happen when you use our product or service?
Yeah, drink 4 bottles of Coca-Cola a day, and check back in 6 months, see how your hospital bed is doing. I mean, really, again, the idea, I think, with again, most of these bigger brands is they figured out that they want to sell you the emotion
Hmm.
that you're feeling, when you purchase something, and that may be artificial, that may be created through the messaging that they're putting out there. But again, the best sales come in when you're able to play into the emotional reaction, of your buyer.
Okay, so you're making all these emotional appeals and really impacting on the emotions of the people that are going to donate or be involved in whatever you're doing. How are we communicating with them? Is there certain channels we should use? Is it? I know it's massively dependent on the audience, but is there certain channels that work better? Certain times of the day that work better? How are we doing this?
Yeah, let's move off of the word channels, right?
Okay.
Because I think that the more important lesson here to emphasize, and what I talk about a lot, from stage, is the importance of using video, right? So across channels, we'll find that video is generally going to be much more effective in terms of, again, making that emotional connection with
Hmm.
your viewer and your audience than would, something like a text post or a static image. And so a big part of my job has been to, encourage and to demonstrate the importance of experimenting with video is really where we start with most nonprofits. And then hopefully we reach a point where we can start to think episodically. We can start to look at how we can improve the videos that are being created. But for many nonprofits out there, it's still that first step into being comfortable on video, that I'm trying to address. And again, it's my hope as I go back to these communities year after year, that we start to get more examples of videos that, nonprofits are trying on a recurring basis, and we say, okay, how can we make this better? How can we improve the messaging? What is How can we improve your timing? Or again, some of the intangibles of the video, the lighting, the audio, the camera placement, all those things can be fixed, but you can't fix it until you actually get started using using video in what you do. So I talk a lot about Facebook Live. The stats show, no matter what continent you're listening to this from, that in fact more nonprofits around the world have a Facebook page than actually have their own website, which I found pretty crazy. That Facebook is kind of how we communicate now with one another. We do know that more than 50% of nonprofits use Instagram, and a slightly higher percentage actually use Twitter on a regular basis. But really, what's going to distinguish your message on any of these platforms or any of the other platforms that we're talking about, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, wherever you feel you're going to be able to best connect with your audience, using video is the real key. So if you want to focus on Facebook, go for it. but I highly recommend that you look into starting to think episodically and create video messaging that's going to represent your brand on a recurring basis.
Just sticking with video then, because that is obviously hugely important in what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
Is it a case that kind of the Gary V model where you document, you don't create, and you produce big pieces of content and you repurpose them? Or is there a particular strategy that you like to use for nonprofit marketing in video form?
Boy, again, it's going to be dependent on the resources that a nonprofit has. There are a
Mm-hmm.
lot of nonprofits out there that are one or two person operation. And I give all the credit in the world to so many of you guys who may be listening, who may be a one person show. And in that case, where you have more limited resources, then yes, I would definitely lean towards the Gary V document, don't create philosophy, right? I love seeing, again, someone walking from their car in the parking lot into the office to kind of just show me and tell me what's going to happen today. What are you working on? Who are you calling? What are you planning? And then maybe when you're walking from the office door back to the car, you pop in again and say, here's what we worked on today. So now you're not even creating video as part of your job. You're just kind of checking in with your audience on a regular basis. And Instagram stories is really a wonderful place to create stuff like that. Now, if you have a team, you have some more resources available, or you want to go a step further, then I'd really encourage you to think more along. I was at Social Media Marketing World the other day. I'm going to credit this now as the Jay Bear model, right?
Okay.
To think like a television station and really create these pillar pieces of video content. And then you're going to be able to create sort of offshoot pieces that are going to drive people to want to watch that main video piece of content that you're creating. Now, I always use the phrase from stage that consistency is greater than frequency. So when professionals like Jay talk about, create this high quality, really highly produced video, the variable that you need to take into consideration is how often can you create content like that on a regular basis, right? Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a quarter, but I really think that's a great sort of guiding guidepost to follow, right? Which would be create something that is super high quality that people actually want to watch and drive attention to that. And don't worry about creating 100 Facebook posts in a month, or you have to tweet 300 times a month. That is baloney. It's garbage. Whatever, you can insert your favorite UK phrase here. However you would describe BS in the UK. That's what I would say about these old school thought processes, that you need to create a certain number of pieces of content to win the algorithm game on a regular basis. No, if you're creating one great video a month, I would take that over 500 pieces of stale, tasteless content every single time.
I think that word algorithm is one of the worst words in marketing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's no fun, and I think that user behavior has started to reflect that people are sick of the algorithm, and ultimately they're sick of sitting there and scrolling up and just looking for whatever's going on. In fact, we know that sometime in 2020, according to Facebook, that the news feed, and if you're watching on video, you can see I'm pretending to scroll up. I can hold my phone up. Instead of scrolling up, people are starting to scroll side to side, and they're consuming content via stories. Stories are expected to outpace news feeds as the primary way in which people consume content on social media sometime in 2020. And that's because stories, again, as we were saying, they're video based. And number two, they represent that authentic feel that of people walking down the street or showing us some behind the scenes on what you're working on, but they represent real people doing real things in real time. And so I really would strongly encourage nonprofits and everybody else listening to, if you don't have a story strategy in place for 2020, to really look into that after this podcast as well. Are you creating stories on a recurring basis? And how are you using stories maybe to drive people to that pillar content, that highly edited content that may be your real center of focus on a recurring basis.
That is so interesting and really, really good tip. Final question before we move into a couple of quick fire questions, then wrap up is, so we've decided that we need to make an impact, and then we've decided that video marketing is something we need to focus on, and then probably stories is something that's going to be the thing that's going to be a real driver. But when it comes to nonprofit, obviously it's the donation element that's hugely important. Is there certain elements we should be introducing, using, adding on these platforms, or is it just the general get somebody into almost I hate the word funnel, but a funnel to that donation or to that whatever we're trying to get them to be involved in?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to be in a funnel. And I've
Yeah.
never heard anyone say that they really want to be, quote, in a funnel either. Right? When you talk about introducing a certain element to the content that you're creating, yes, but that element is it's an X factor called gratitude, right?
Mhm.
And what's most important, again, I hate to keep going back to principles over do this and this will work, but there are so many ways within these principles that you're able to actually execute upon what I'm saying here in terms of keeping your ear to the ground and listening to what people are saying. So if you want a practical, like an implementable idea here, use some of these interactive tools on Instagram stories to be able to gather information in real time from your audience. I love using polls on Instagram
Mm.
stories to pick choice A or choice B. I love using quizzes to be able to figure out what it is that your audience knows about what you're trying to do. Open-ended questions are another thing that you can really dive in hard on Instagram, and never underestimate the value of a question, right? I just listened to Marcus Sheridan just hammer home the importance of questions. They ask you answer is his book and his career philosophy. And when someone who's watching what you're doing has a question for you, nothing is more important in the process than giving them an answer. And so I would look at both how you can shape your own content around creating answers to the questions that people have about what you're doing, but also look at ways to use tools like Instagram stories, like polls on Twitter. There's even ways that you can put up polls and stuff in your Facebook Live videos using tools like Switcher Studio to be able to get information from your audience when they're giving you their attention and turn that one to many connection that you have through social media into a many to one, into this circuitous conversation. And that, I think, is where those donations are going to start to come from, is when you're demonstrating year round that you're listening to what your potential donors have to say, and you have a content strategy that's going to attract in more prospective donors. Again, people want to establish relationships. And then again, on March 26th, when the big give rolls around in San Antonio, and all the newspapers, television stations, and everybody on social media says it's time to give. Well, who am I going to give to? I'm going to give to the nonprofits that have worked throughout the remainder of the year to establish that back and forth communicative relationship with me on whatever channel they may live on.
Love it. Absolutely brilliant. Right, I want to just move on to some quick fire questions now, if that's okay. Fairly random. Oh, I love it. For anyone on the
Bring it on.
podcast, basically Chris is saying bring it on, so let's do it. What's that source of information you can't live without? Where do you go for all your information?
YouTube. I watch YouTube constantly, man. I've got my Apple TV. I got a Roku in my bedroom. YouTube really is such an underrated place that if you have any question at all, YouTube is absolutely where I go.
So what's the last thing you remember Googling?
Oof. I was Googling birthday gift ideas for my stepdad today. He turned 60, so happy birthday, Jody.
Absolutely.
um,
What's he
I
getting?
was I actually went to Cameo and I got him some special personalized messages from an actor and a professional athlete.
Oh,
I
brilliant.
know he really appreciates. So went the creative route this time.
Superb. Love it. If you could tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be?
Don't uh, don't commit to a dream that's too small.
Oh, like
You
it.
know, um, think really huge, because hey, dude, once the year 2000, once Y2K crosses by, there's going to be this crazy world where you can connect with people and podcasters from around the world at a touch of a button. And so, don't sell yourself short on your dreams. Keep reaching higher and higher because you're surrounded ultimately by great, great people that want to help you get there.
Oh, love it. What's the most important thing to know about marketing right now?
That people want to connect with people, and that if you are, as a brand, not listening to the people that want to have a conversation with you, then those people are going to go somewhere else. So it, business has always been about the people that are it's always been about the customer, but
Hmm.
now more than ever the customers want to have a conversation with you, and you should be investing time and resources, and strategizing about how you can effectively drive conversations that are going to lead to that business.
Brilliant. Chris, final and most important question of the whole chat. If people want to find out more about what you do, where should they go?
You can find me on social media at Chris Strub. I'm on Twitter, is where I love to drive conversations with you. I'm on Instagram at Chris Strub. My website is teamstrub.com. And hopefully, I will see you maybe at some of these giving days around the United States in San Antonio, Gainesville, Florida, York, Pennsylvania, St. Louis, Missouri, and Columbia, South Carolina this spring.
Wow, love it. Chris, thank you so, so much for your time. Absolute pleasure speaking to you today.
This has been awesome. Hope the sun comes out tomorrow there, bud. Stay clean. Enjoy that Purell. I know we're doing it over here in the States.
Chris, thanks once again for joining us. That was so interesting. Such a valuable take on not-for-profit marketing. And I've got three massively important takeaways to summarize that amazing chat with Chris. The first one is that you need to think about the emotional connection you can create. Take a look at some of the most successful brands in the world: Apple, Coca-Cola, Disney, and some of the non-for-profit organizations that are massively successful helping people around the world. They all use emotion to make a connection with their audience and stay front of mind, be it through lifestyle, innovation and tech, or imagination. So how are you going to spark an emotional connection with your audience? Fundamental. The second takeaway is that you need to use video to show the impact your service is having. It's not about what you do. No one really cares. It's the problem you're solving. This we found out on the special episode recorded with Ryan Folan back in October 2019. Links in the show notes. OVS. You need to show this impact through video content. And this can work amazingly well, particularly on social channels. And finally, go behind the scenes. Consistency in content is key, and we all need to be thinking like a TV station and producing quality content on a regular basis that goes behind the scenes of what we actually do. Letting people in, being authentic, open, and honest can resonate much better than the standard corporate business, this is what we're all about, stage video can. So let's be seeing the real you, the real business, and the problems that you're solving. Thank you so much for joining us today on Marketing Study Lab. It really means the world that you're listening to this out there. And hopefully I've provided you some value. If you're looking to know more about what Marketing Study Lab does and is about, go to marketingstudylab.co.uk or get in touch with me personally, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or feel free to email me at peter@marketingstudylab.co.uk. Happy marketing.